documentation, but there are lesson studies that I think even within the church that are handed out that disagree with this position that I'm going to be giving now. But the position that I'm giving now can be found in the book of Uriah Smith's Daniel Revelation, so I'm in agreement with him on his understanding here. But a lot of people, even within Adventism, do not agree of the next few verses from 23 to 29. So I hope you can appreciate that. So it says here, verse 23 says, and with arms of a flood, verse 23, and after the league made with him, he shall work deceitfully, for he shall come up and shall become strong with a small people. So the clue that really helps us here is when it says league. So there's a league made with him, the king of the north. Now this league is actually referred to on the 1843 chart, so it's actually a historical date that's been given there, a prophetic date and a historical one, and this date is 161 BC. And this is the league, it's a famous league between the Jews and the Romans. This is the league between the Jews and the Romans. And if you're familiar with the apocryphal books and history, are you familiar with the Maccabees? Yeah, you may or may not have heard of the Maccabees. So this history here is the history of the Maccabees, and it was the Maccabee dynasty or brothers that went to Rome and made a league with them. Now the reason that they make the league with Rome in 161 BC is because Syria, or this Grecian Empire, that King of the North in that time frame, so not the King of the North, but a league made with him. And in 161 BC, Syria are coming to attack Israel, and they go and ask for Rome to help and defend them. So that's the background of that. It's the Maccabean time period. And the king who's reigning in this time period in Syria is the 8th king. And the reason why I'm giving you this, because he's a famous character. It's Antiochus the 4th, or Epiphanes. So has everybody heard of Antiochus Epiphanes? Yeah, he's the one that everybody talks about. He's actually in, he's not discussed in the verse, but his time setting is really in verse 23. Okay, sorry. The league made with him. So the Jews make a league with him. At the Jewish instigation, this league is made. Yes. Verse 24. We're in verse 24. And he shall enter peaceably even upon the fattest parts of the province, and he shall do that which his fathers have not done, nor his fathers' fathers. He shall scatter among them the prey, and spoil the riches. Yea, he shall forecast his devices against the strongholds, even for a time. The reason why this verse is important, this verse and the next verse, verse 25, is because it gives you a time prophecy. So in the last part of the verse, it's talking about the king of the north. This whole verse is talking about the king of the north. It says, yea, he, the king of the north, shall forecast his devices against the strongholds, even for a time. So the first thing I want to deal with is the issue of the time. Okay, we know that a time is a year, and a year is 360 days or years, a day for a year. So this time is 360 years. The start date for this 360 years, we're going to pick up in the next verse. Okay, we're going to pick it up in the next verse, but I'll give you the date now. It's 31 BC, And 31 BC, with 360 added onto it, takes you to 330 AD. Okay, we have 330 AD and 31 BC. So the information before that, it says, yea, he shall forecast his devices against the stronghold. Now this word against, and the Hebrew word for that is H5921. Now if you go back and look at what that word actually means, the idea of it being against is a valid translation, but when you actually look at what the meaning of that word means, the meaning actually means to be on top of or over. And you can see that, if I can give this kind of idea, if you can think that you're in a fight with somebody, so you're fighting with them, and so you're fighting against them, and if you knock them to the ground, you would be over the top of them, wouldn't you? You'd be on top of them because you've overpowered them. So that's why this concept of being on top of or over something, you can have this idea of being against. Sorry? The Hebrew, the Strong's number for that. H5921. You can, if you've got a computer, you can easily find that. Or if you've got the book, then you can even with the book, obviously, because you know the word is against. So you just go to against, so you'd find it in the reading of it. It's H5921. So more correctly, this concept of being on top of or over gives this idea that Rome is going to forecast his devices while he's standing on top of his empire. And his empire is centered in the city of Rome. So Rome's seat or center is the city of Rome. So instead of using this idea of against, a more literal translation would be from the city of Rome. From the city of Rome, he forecasts his devices, or he wars from the city of Rome. And he does that from 31 BC to 330 AD. I'll give you the date for this event here, sorry, the event for this date. This is when Constantine leaves the city of Rome and heads eastward and sets up a new kingdom in Constantinople. And that's an important date, okay? And we'll pick up that point in a moment. So 331 is an important date because when Constantine leaves Rome and makes his residence in Constantinople. So in verse 25, that was verse 24, verse 25 gives us a start date of AD of 31 BC. And it's dealing with the Battle of Actium, which occurred in 31 BC. We're in verse 25. The Battle of Actium, A-C-T-I-U-M. It says, and he shall stir up all his power and his courage against the king of the south with a great army. And the king of the south shall be stirred up to battle with a very great and mighty army, which shall not stand, for they shall forecast devices against him.
Can I come back on forecast his devices against strongholds in verse 24?
Yeah.
So it was funny that it was saying he rose from the city of Rome. Strongholds are representing Rome?
Yes.
Yeah.
Rome was the stronghold for the Roman Empire.
So it means he was on top of the stronghold.
Yes. That's where he's standing. His power base is where he stands. Verse 25 is dealing with the warfare between Rome and Egypt. So this is a war between Rome and Egypt. And this occurs in 31 BC. So after the Battle of Actium, we know that Egypt is become subject to the Roman Empire. So let's just draw this issue, this story again. We had Greece here, went to the king of the south, the king of the north, and we had 168 BC, 64 BC, and now the last date that we've got is 31 BC. So Egypt, Syria and Greece are all taken down. And I'm going to put in dotted here, we have another date, 63 BC. Remember 63 BC, where Rome enters into the glorious land. So the three dates that we are interested in are this date, and this date. And I'll explain why we're interested in those dates. So I'm going to erase all of this. Okay. So this is the king of the north. 168 BC becomes king of the north. 64 BC he takes Syria. 63 BC he takes the glorious land. 31 BC he takes Egypt. '63 and 31, yeah, did I say, if I said something else? If you turn to Daniel chapter 8 verse 9, Daniel chapter 8 verse 9, which is a little horn, which is pagan Rome in this verse, it says, out of one of them came forth a little horn which waxed exceeding great, toward the south, toward the east, and toward the pleasant land. That history that's given in verse 9 is the history that we've just dealt with in this little picture here. Between verse 8 and verse 9 of Daniel chapter 8, pagan Rome is already king of the north. So this date of 168 BC, when you get to Daniel 8:9 and you had Daniel 8:8, just tucked into here between the verses is this date here, where Rome is the king of the north. He's already the king of the north before verse 9 of Daniel chapter 8. And those three entities that are spoken about in verse 9, it says toward the south, toward the east, and toward the pleasant land, are these three events that are spoken of in this history that we've just covered. So he goes toward the east, the south, and the pleasant land, or the glorious land. The east is Syria, the south is Egypt, and then the pleasant land is the glorious land, or Israel. And so those three dates are going to match up with that history that's given in Daniel chapter 8 verse 9. The east is Syria. Yeah, because it's east of where Rome is. Where he's going to come from his power base, Syria is actually east of that. That's why it identifies the east in this one. South is obvious. The pleasant land, it doesn't give a geographical location, a compass direction. It just says the glorious land.
So from the 168, when you've got the arrow coming down.
The 168.
What's that part there?
The king of the north. He's the king of the north, and he's the king of the north before verse 9. Before verse 9, he's king of the north. Because he took the title for Greece in 168. He took the title when he took the empire. I'm going to erase this. Is everybody okay? The reason why it's important to understand this is because you see that in Daniel chapter 8 he takes down these three territories, and it's connected with the history that's given in Daniel 11. So you can see that prophecies, these are identical, and it helps to establish who the little horn is in verse 9, and it gives you the structural integrity to go through verse 9, 10, 11 and 12.